click it. Okay, we're good.
We're live.
Okay, will the members of the UIL Sports Officials Committee please come to order? This meeting of the University Interscholastic League Sports Officials Committee is now in official session. I am Brian Davis, the chair of this committee. For the record, it is approximately 10:04 a.m. on Tuesday, September the 22nd. In accordance with the waiver to certain provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act issued by Governor Greg Abbott on March the 16th, 2020, and in the interest of avoiding large gatherings and promoting social distancing during this COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held via teleconference and is streaming live. Please be aware that minutes are being taken. Committee members, I will now do a roll call. Please respond if you are here. Bobby Cruz.
President, good morning.
Randy Davis.
Yep, here.
Eddie Hopkins.
Here.
Teresa McAllister.
Here.
Kyle McNeely.
I'm here.
John Miller.
Here.
Russ Reeves.
Here.
Andre Walker.
Here.
At this time, I certify that a quorum of the Sports Officials Committee is present. I'd also like for UIL staff to introduce yourself at this time, please.
Susan Elza, UIL staff.
Dylan Bankston, UIL staff.
Brian Polk, UIL staff.
Jessica Walker, UIL staff. Kelsey Wycliffe, UIL staff.
Jamie Harrison, UIL.
Thank you. Unless there's an objection from the committee members, the agenda for this business meeting and hearings will be as set out in our agenda, unless otherwise announced by the chair. Hearing no objection, the agenda is officially adopted. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the 2020-2021 UIL Constitution and Contest Rules. You should have a copy of the minutes in your packet. Turning to those from the previous meeting, the committee members will look those over, and then after you look them over, I'll ask for a motion to approve them as presented. So take a few minutes there to look the minutes over.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption.
We have a motion from Eddie Hopkins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, motion, I'm sorry, a second from Kyle McNeely. We've already gone over this in the pre-meeting, but let me go over it one more time. I'll give you instructions on voting, and then we'll have the vote to approve the minutes. If you're connected by a computer, please click on the participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and a list of all the participants will appear. At the bottom of the participant list, you can see options to either click yes or no. Committee members who have called in, and I don't think we have anybody that's called in, but if you're on the phone, you enter *9 if you'd like to vote yes. Okay, if you will, at this time, vote on approving the minutes.
Brian, I think you're the last one that has to vote on it.
Yeah, now mine's not giving me a yes or no. Let me try again. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Yeah, it's unanimous.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has passed with a majority of the vote. And the UIL will clear the votes after each vote. At this time, the chair will recognize Dale Hudson of the Texas High School Basketball Officials Association. Dale, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with the Sports Officials Committee meeting today. My main purpose for being here is to provide a little bit of information and then solicit any information I can from the committee members on any of these questions that I might have. First of all, I want to give the whole committee plaudits for all the work you do, especially in relation to officiating. We obviously don't have a job without the schools and the games and that you provide for us. So we appreciate very much the opportunity to work with the UIL and with our schools in the state of Texas to officiate the contest. Obviously, as everybody well knows, this has been a very strange year. You guys at the UIL have dealt with the beginning of the school year, getting ready with all the COVID-19 protocols and things like that to prepare for football and volleyball, which they are now underway. We in the basketball world are fastly approaching the beginning of our season. And the one thing that I want to bring up first, just to make this committee aware of it, is the projected shortage of officials that we're going to have this year. Most of our chapters, we have 29 chapters in the state of Texas, and most of them have sent out surveys to their former members asking how many of them are going to return to officiate this year. And it's been across the board, but we're projecting that we're going to have a shortage of 20 to 25% of the officials that we have had in the past. And it's been very challenging for our chapters to cover games with a full allotment of officials, and with a quarter of them being gone this year, it's going to be extremely challenging. I know some of our chapters have sent out communications with their athletic directors and their coaches to make suggestions as far as scheduling goes that will help alleviate some of the problems that we're going to have. We at the THSBOA are well aware of the state laws that we're not, schools are not allowed to play except for one night in the Monday through Thursday window. They do have the option of playing on Friday and Saturday. But within that Monday through Friday window, if we could encourage, and if you guys could encourage your school contacts to schedule maybe a little more creatively this year on non-traditional nights other than just every Tuesday and Friday, you're going to open up a larger pool of officials and help us as an official group to be able to cover the games. Our goal is to make sure that every contest has the appropriate number of officials, but being realistic and looking at the number of officials that have told us they're not coming back because of the COVID virus, we're looking at a pretty substantial shortage this year. And if everybody plays all their games on Tuesdays and Fridays, it's going to be very difficult to make sure all those contests are covered. Again, it's not our goal to not cover those games. We certainly want to have 3 officials at contests that require 3 and 2 at the contests that require 2. But it's going to be a real challenge this year because of the numbers being down. And again, throughout the time that I am given here to speak, if you have any suggestions or comments or anything you'd like to ask me, by all means, feel free to do so. The other big topic that's come up among the officiating groups is the face coverings. And we have looked at all the guidelines that CDC and the NFHS and UIL have put out as far as protocols go. We in the officiating world are mainly concerned with what's taking place, especially in basketball, within the lines of the court. And it's my feeling that if participants and coaches are going to be required to wear face coverings on the sidelines and on the bench area, that's fine as far as what they look like, what they colors they are, et cetera, et cetera. But our concern and our question is, if a student athlete chooses to wear a face covering on the court, are there going to be any guidelines as to the color that has to be, Is it going to be considered part of the uniform? Can it have a logo on it? Those are the kind of questions that I'm getting, that I'm bringing to the committee, just for your guidance. I have talked to Dr. Elza, and I think we're going to have a phone conversation about some of these specifics, but I want you guys to be aware that that's a concern that people have, that we want to make sure we're all consistent in how we deal with those situations across the state. Another suggestion that was brought to my attention that I had not thought about is the cheerleaders that are down on the floor. Are they going to be required to wear face coverings? And if so, are they going to need to match their school colors, things like that? We just want some guidance as to how to deal with that, because ultimately, as the officials on the court, we're going to be responsible for dealing with those situations on game night. As far as fans up in the stands and social distancing and them wearing face coverings, we as officials, we rely on game administration to take care of those situations. We can bring those things to their attention, but it's the game administration at the site that's responsible for dealing with those things. A suggestion was made to me that, and this again is just a suggestion, would it be possible maybe to move the beginning row of fans up maybe to the third row to not allow seating down on the bottom row of benches, so that if a ball was to bounce over that way, maybe no fan would be handling it to throw it back in. There's some concern about cleaning the basketballs and things like that, and that would be difficult to monitor if if people in the stands are actually touching the ball. And as far as the actual game administration, as officials, and as you guys as coaches and former players, if you have some momentum going in a game, you really hate to have that stopped by somebody having to come out there and clean the basketball. I can see during free throws, during timeouts, in between periods, et cetera, those would be logical times to do that. But when a ball just goes out of bounds, I would hope we would not have situations where we're having to clean it every single time, because we don't want to interrupt the natural flow of the game any more than we have to. Understanding also that this is a very different year, very challenging, and there may be some situations that we have to do some of those things. Another thing I want to bring to your attention is we as officials have discussed possibly changing very minutely some of our mechanics. For example, there are situations when we're preparing for a throw-in in basketball where we directly hand the ball to the student athlete. There are other situations where we bounce the ball to them. We may go to a protocol where we just bounce the ball every time to them. It would not substantially change the way the games are officiated, and probably nobody but other than an official would even notice it. But we're discussing those kind of things too. Again, all these things that we're discussing are going to have to come with the UIL's blessing. We are basically we follow the guidelines that the UIL puts out there. We follow their protocols. The way we've operated in the off season, some of these summer and fall leagues that have been taking place at our school. If a school has certain protocols in place, we've just been following the guidelines that the school has. I don't think NFHS has really had any.
I'll be honest, I don't remember what was in under each of those things.
Dale?
Only under recovery.
Yes.
I think we're getting some feedback from Jamie's. Yeah, he just muted.
Okay.
Are you about done? And the reason I asked, I forgot to say we have a 5-minute limit, so.
I can end this up anytime you want, sir.
Okay, well, and I don't know if you have anything else to ask the committee or bring to our attention, but everything you have said so far really does not fall under the parameters of this committee. It's more of a UIL or rules deal. So I'm going to let Dr. Elza address your concerns right now, then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Dale, I know you and I talked before this meeting, and I know you and I had expressed, if you wanted to go on record to just talk about some of the things that y'all were talking about. But because some of you have started and some of you have not started sports, but I know Mike knows full well, and John, because he's officiating sports right now. A lot of the things that Dale put out there for the committee to think about has already been addressed with football and volleyball. And even though team tennis is not under the sports officials committee completely because it's considered an individual sport, they have some parameters too that they've called on UIL to help them shape and form. And we're not going to put an official on the court. We're not going to put them in a position, any of our associations in a position for them not to be prepared. Some of the things that they'll address, the shortage, I want to just reemphasize to everybody and anybody listening to this call, the school week limitation only allows the one contest during the week, but the calendar week allows for 3. And Dale, he could work at UIL because he gave that definition pretty spot on. So the non-traditional nights, I mean, it's not anything new that we've never heard before, but it is a different time. And Mike can tell you, when he speaks, if he so chooses, that the same shortages exist in all the sports that he is in charge of. So I think, I know somebody texted me while we were on this call that's actually listening in, and they said, we should go back to 2 officials in basketball. Well, that's the school's choice. That's the district's choice, whether they officiate with 2 or 3. It's just like 5 and 7 in football. So, for the schools that are listening in, I would express that we do need to, help our coaches understand that they may need to change some of the nights, the traditional nights that they play on, just to help fill the gaps. We're not going to put, any of our kids, our coaches, our officials, any school personnel, any fans. Our protocols are built to keep people safe, and as we've talked, those protocols, they come under fire at times. But the ultimate for all of us is the safety for all involved in all contests. And so Dale, as we've talked before, you guys are going to be brought up to speed on all of this when we get on a call, hopefully, towards the end of this week or next week. And that way you can go back and educate your officials on everything. As far as anything else, I think everybody knows, especially those of you school folks that have been practicing with these protocols with your teams, and for you officials that are already actively calling right now, you see all those protocols in place. And we will get all of our associations, Randy, when softball starts, we'll get you guys up to speed. Any of the other ones that I'm leaving out that I can't think of right now. So Dale, thank you. Thank you for all you do. We look forward to working with you guys and collaborating with Tasso on our basketball stuff. It is our next sport around the corner, and we'll get you out on the court and get you prepared in a safe way.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the committee today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dale. At this time, the chair recognizes Mike Fitch of the Texas Association of Sports Officials. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. Let me first say I can appreciate Dale's concern, because I was exactly where he was a couple of months ago as we were getting ready to start football and volleyball. And, what I'm looking for is somebody that's got experience in starting a high school athletic association, sports association, in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, in the midst of a worldwide economic crisis. If you find somebody that's got that experience, let me know, because I need their help. What we did is we just have to work through this a little bit at a time. There is a shortage. Shortage is not the right word for us right now. Of course, basketball is too soon to tell. The 2 sports that are actively officiating, volleyball and football, we have a reduction in officials in both of them, about 12%. And the 12% we can handle, especially the varsity games. Some of the sub-varsity gets a little bit dicey. Schools have worked well with us to move those around. We get some unusual situations. We had a game that a city that canceled, a school district canceled all of their football games last week, and then realized that, oh, wait a minute, we shouldn't have canceled our varsity game. And we got a call from the coach 30 minutes before the game started, and we pulled officials from everywhere to get them there. We got them covered. So it'll work out. It will work out, trust me. Maybe not like we want it, but we will. So yeah, about 12% is what we've experienced in volleyball and football. A lot of our members are my age. You know, problem is you look at officials and they all look like me and Dale and Eddie and Kyle, and they're all just a bunch of old folks. And some of those people should not be officiating, and we get that. So independent contractors, it's up to the official to decide if they're going to officiate this year or whether they're going to, just deny certain contests, and that's fine. One topic I really wanted to quickly bring up, Brian, and I'll get to it quickly. It's not on the agenda, but I really would like for the committee to address this. Currently in 1204, there is a 45-day window for the payment of officials. Nobody can remember when this started, but I can tell you it goes back to the days when all the banking was done by paper. When you got bank statements from your school district, get bank statements from the bank, school board would meet, approve the bank statements, authorize payments for checks for the next month. That was great when everything was paper-based. In 2020, that's not the case. Everything is electronic. And we need to shorten that window. I think it needs to be down. My recommendation is 14 days. I'd like for this committee to consider taking action because it is not going to affect the amount of money that any school district pays. It's going to urge them to pay the officials more quickly. We have officials that have lost their real job, that are struggling financially, and the sooner we can get the money in their pockets, the better off it is for everyone. So really I don't know if there's a lot of discussion on that. It's just a matter of let's come into the 21st century and treat this like everything is done electronically, and let's lower that window. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. As far as the changing the window on pay, that's actually would be a legislative council deal. Dr. Elsa, we don't need to take any action with this committee, I don't think. Maybe something y'all might address with the legislative council.
I think, and I don't know if Dr. Harrison's where he can weigh in or not, but in my opinion, the committee can make a recommendation to the council because the council ultimately has to pass every recommendation that comes from this committee. So in my mind, with the mix of school folks on here and the mix of officials that we have on here, they would be, they'd be a good group to make that recommendation.
Well,
I don't know, as far as taking action, I don't know that Mike was asking for us to take action today. I think he's looking for it to be considered as a proposal down the line. Mike, you may want to clarify if you see that a little differently.
Well, we would always appreciate quick action, but before any action's taken, it's got to be brought before the committee, and that's what we're doing today.
okay. And with it not being on the agenda, I don't know that we could take any action. We might look at putting it on the agenda in the spring.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike. We're now ready to move on to new business. The first item as far as proposal is consideration of a $5 fee increase for officials for the 2021-22 school year, or creation of a long-term plan for fee increases. I'll just open it up for discussion.
I just want to remind the committee, I'm sure there will be some discussion on this. Originally, this, it feels like a long time ago, but originally this had gone to the Legislative Council as a $10 proposal. It was changed to a $5 proposal. They told us to take the second $5 and bring it back to the committee. We did not enter this conversation, as an agenda topic in our spring meeting. And so we will need to report something back to the council. Doesn't mean in form of action, but with that kind of just filling in the gaps on that history of where this has been and where it is now, if like Brian said, open it up for discussion.
Well, I'm waiting on other people. If you want to say something, feel free to join in. But I think with the current budget issues that schools are facing, that we're probably looking at, I don't know that we want to approach this at this time, maybe for the 21-22 school year. I do know that Tasso, and I'm not sure about Texas high school basketball, but I do know that Tasso is in communication with and working with the Athletic Directors Association and the Girls Coaches Association and the Texas High School Coaches Association on trying to work out a remedy here. And you know, I don't know the feeling of the committee. I have visited with Mike a little bit about this. I think Mike understands that this is probably not the best time to approach this with the pandemic and the budget crisis that most schools are facing. With that said, Mike, I'm going to ask you just to comment right quick about, I don't want to say something that is not true as far as your way you view this.
Mr. Chair, I think you're exactly right. This is on the agenda because it was referred from the Ledge Council. So that's the way it should be. But I don't think anyone could really expect any type of action at this time. We don't know what the school funding situation is going to be next year. So I agree. This just needs to kind of be put on the back burner. Let's get through this mess that we're in, and then we'll pick up a conversation at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Mike. Dale, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would agree with Mr. Fitch on that. This is a very challenging time. And one thing that I would like to suggest, I discussed this with Dr. Elza before, is that maybe this committee thinks about every other year having a discussion about, let's say in odd years, about game fee increases, and even years about mileage reimbursement. Not necessarily that it would be required to do anything about it, but just set up discussions so that every other year we would be looking at these two issues on a consistent basis. That's something I would like for y'all to consider.
Okay, thanks, Dale. Anybody on the committee have any comments? I do know that the officials associations are working hand in hand with the High School Athletic Directors Association. Russ, you or Andre or Bobby, y'all have any input there on that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Basically,
Okay, go ahead, Russ.
oh, sorry, Andre. Basically, we're working very closely with the Officials Association, and they have some pilot things that they're working on that are very promising as far as breakdown of increases, and not necessarily doing $5 across the board, but doing percentages, which has gotten some good reviews from the athletic directors. So as far as anything that we discuss, and Mike knows this, is Andre, Bobby, and I, we're going to take it back to our constituents and have them kind of mull it over so that whatever we do is consistent across the board for all of us. So, but I'm in full agreement now of really not touching it because of where we are. But I do know that the wheels are rolling, and Mike and his people have done a great job kind of giving some different ways of looking at it that are very promising from the AD standpoint.
Okay, Andre?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I would like to go ahead and make a motion that we table this discussion until a later date.
Okay. Do you have any input as far as the Athletic Directors Association other than what Russ said?
Pretty much Russ said it.
Okay.
You know, it's encouraging, but again, it is time to table it to a later date.
Bobby, you have anything to add to that?
Well, just to echo what Russ said, I think he covered it for ADs. I appreciate Mike and the association for recognizing the situation that we're under. I know talking to Andre and Russ and Region 8, the directors in our area, you know, we're all getting hit pretty hard, you know, budget wise, and who knows what it's going to look like next year. I mean, our superintendent's using words like, you know, hold the line and reduction and then recovery after this when we get past this. But so I appreciate everyone's consideration with the situation that we're under. Thank you.
All right, I have a motion on the floor to table this I'm going to ask for a second and then we'll have a little more discussion.
I second it.
Okay, I've got a motion from Andre and a second from Russ. Before we vote, is there anybody else on the committee that has any input as far as the fee increase?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question, information for me personally. I know the last thing we want to do is like pass a fee increase in the spring or summer that would impact schools very quickly because they got their budgets they have to develop some time out. So to the ADs here, what is the optimum time for something like this to come in for a school district then to be able to put that in the budget and work with it? So I know we don't want to do anything now, and I don't have an issue with that, but if we were to do something for 21, 22, would the time be now to do that? And because we wouldn't want to do it in the spring and just be a few months away. So my question is more of timing and the optimum timing to be considering these things than the current discussion.
I think that's a great question, Kyle. And I think the best thing for school districts is lining it up with the legislature. And after they meet and set the budgets and what school districts are going to receive, then that gives school districts clarity on what direction they need to go. So after the legislature meets, I think that's when that should occur.
I agree with that, Russ. And the legislature meets every other year. So I think that what this committee probably needs to consider is that in the fall committee meeting of odd numbered years is to look at this real close, because you've got to remember, we don't have the authority to give the increase. All we have the authority to do is to make a proposal to the legislative council, which they will then meet in October of that same odd numbered year. And then they have schools, if they would approve it, schools would have from October until the next summer when they're working on budgets to take care of this. So I really think this time next year, after the legislation meets, then we'll have a better idea if we want to pursue it or, either propose an increase or not, whatever the case may be. And then in that October legislative meeting, they can take it from there. So I think if we could get on that cycle where it would benefit everybody involved, the officials, the schools, and the legislation council.
So the fall of odd years is overall the best timing.
Right.
Is that correct?
I would think so.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I want to, before we vote on tabling this, I've been thinking about this. Russ, you and Andre and Robert, do you think we ought to form a subcommittee to work or to stay in communication with the officials organizations and the Athletic Directors Association, the Coaches Association, in case they want input from us, or so that y'all could relay that information back?
Yeah, I think the way it's set up now, we have very good communication right now with our ADs Association, with the committee members that are on this committee right now. And Mike does a great job giving input. So I really feel good about the process that has come out of what we've been through. And I think the communication is better than it's ever been. So I don't think it's necessary to have a subcommittee. What did Andre and Bobby, what do you guys think?
Well, Russ, I agree with you. I think we don't need an additional layer because that communication gap has been bridged. And so I don't think we need another layer or another subcommittee to get involved at this time. However, I do want to add, I know we're talking about the pandemic and gracious that everyone understands that, but I want people to understand as well, with many school districts being virtual and students are in virtual learning, a lot of folks, a lot of students are not logging on, are not getting involved. And that's going to cause school districts to even lose more money than they would have just with the normal pandemic. So I don't want folks to think when we come out of this, everything is going to be okay, because it's not. Because that additional layer, even with the ones that are face to face and parents not feeling comfortable with sending their students back to school, we have to be mindful of that. That is going to hit the districts hard as well, in addition to everything else that's going on.
Okay. Anything else, Bobby?
No, I agree with Russ. I think the way we have it right now is good. Our communication, like ours with Region 8, with the Laredo, Corpus, San Antonio, all the way up to Austin is good, and I communicate with them as well. Andre hit it right on the head. We don't know what it's going to look like. Down here in Laredo, we've got people actually taking their kids out and homeschooling, not a lot, but some. Our biggest school, which is United High School, which is 4,300 kids. Monday was the first day of actually coming back face to face, up to 25%. And if parents wanted to send their kids back, and out of a school of 4,300, we had 3 show up for face to face. And then that was yesterday. Then they took a look at what, how many kids went back. And then so today we only had 1 report to United High School. The rest chose to stay virtual. So, we're in the process, like Rondre said, we're in the process of calling kids daily. Hey, you haven't logged on. Are you in? And so, who knows what it's going to look like, but we certainly, Russ and Andre and I, we appreciate the consideration with all this.
Okay, well, if we decide at a later date to get a subcommittee, just so we have communication back and to work with those groups, we may do that at a later date. And what I had in mind, if we wanted to do a subcommittee, was to have maybe a couple of athletic directors and an official on that, so that we would have open communication. But we'll address that at a later date if we so desire. All right, I have a motion to table this proposal for a fee increase, and I have a second. At this time, we'll vote to table or not. If you vote yes, you're voting to table it.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Okay. The proposal was tabled with a majority of the vote. Second item on the agenda is consideration of altering the portal-to-portal mileage range on the officials' fee schedule. The proposal is to remove the last mileage range, which is 91 to 120.9 miles on the officials' fee schedule. Anybody have any comments?
Mr. Chair, I think it would be helpful if, and I know y'all have, kind of an overview within your packets, and we can put that up on the screen if you need us to. Just it's basically a snapshot of the meeting minutes when it was discussed originally last September. But it might be helpful if Mike maybe just gave another overview of the proposal and why they would recommend dropping that last mileage ring.
Okay, Mike, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, we're certainly in favor of this. If you'll recall, when this travel proposal was passed, everyone agreed this is not perfect, but we kicked the can down the road long enough. Let's do it and let's make adjustments once we get into it. And I think that's where we are right now. This affects very, very few schools. Only those schools that are greater than 91 miles away from their chapter center point are affected. Those are very, very few. And what's happening is it's hard to get officials to go to those schools, because if an official lives on the other side of the chapter center point, now all of a sudden that 91 miles might be 150 one way. So they're losing money at the current rate. And the officials that are going live a little closer, but the schools are seeing the same officials. Schools don't like to see the same officials game after game after game. Officials do not like to go to the same school game after game after game. I think the other unintended circumstances is some of those schools or many of those schools are saying, okay, we won't use UIL registered officials, whether they be TASO, THSBOA, Lone Star, whatever, for subvarsity, because we can just get some local folks to do it and we don't have to pay them mileage. Well, now you've got officials working games that may or may not have been background checked, may or may not have been trained, may or may not have had a test. You just don't know who the heck you're getting. That actually reared its ugly head in basketball a year or so ago when schools were using non-UIL registered officials. So by going to portal, and also I think it'll save some of the schools some money, because if they're in that 120 or 91 to 120 miles, but you've got an official that lives 10 miles away, well, currently he or she is still getting the $70. Where if that was in the portal, then it would be a legitimate amount from what their travel is. So I just believe it's time to realize we need to make some adjustments. This is a very minor adjustment. Our chapters have talked to those schools involved, and they are certainly, the ones we've talked to are very much in favor of this also. So TASO would recommend that the last mileage range be dropped.
Dale, do you have any comments?
I would agree with what Mike said originally. It's a very small group of schools that are going to be affected by this. Very, very few of our chapters. That last mileage ring rarely kicks in during a regular season. It only kicks in during the playoffs. So it's a small group of people that it's affecting. And I say is, if it's a positive for some of the areas, then I would be in favor of removing that last ring as well.
Mr. Chair, if I could, let it go on record that I agree with Mike Fitch on this. Honestly, I believe that, I had talked this morning with Ron Brown in Permian Basin and Tim Evans in Amarillo and South Texas. Our South Texas chapter actually drives and services Del Rio. So they're 3 hours one way to get to a ball game. So this would definitely positively affect those officials. And also Ron out in Midland, they service Marathon, Marfa. They have officials that drive a long way. So this would positively affect them. And then Amarillo, they have one school that's 150 miles one way that they service. So it's only 3 chapters, but I think because of the shortage already, this could encourage some folks possibly to officiate and accept those games at that distance. And as Mike has said, schools really get tired of seeing the same people over and over, and it's vice versa. The officials truly agree that they don't want to see the same kids and coaches over and over for their benefit, for everybody's benefit. So I'd like to move that we adopt this change.
Okay, I have a motion to alter the portal mileage range by removing the last mileage range of 91 to 120.9 miles. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Kyle McNeely. Any discussion or any more discussion? I would just like to throw in, I don't see a problem with this at all. You're talking about, when you get technical, you're talking about mileage from 91 miles to 120.9. That's if you get over 120.9, you're doing portal to portal anyway. And I heard some of you say, there's schools that are out there 150 miles. They're already getting portal to portal. So you're talking about a very small range. And again, all we can do is, if we decide to pass this, is it's a recommendation to the Legislative Council. They would have to take action, and that would happen in October. And if they approve that, then this would take effect for what would that be, the 21-22 school year? Is that
Yes.
correct, Dr. Elsa?
That's
Next
correct.
August.
Yes.
And, and if we see that it becomes an issue, we can always, that's one thing this committee has the authority to do is go back and look at things. And, if we feel like we made a mistake, if it is approved by the legislative council, we can always address it later. But I'm in agreement that I think this is something worth looking at, something that we probably need to approve. Just my 2 cents worth. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second to alter the portal-to-portal mileage range as stated on the agenda. At this time, if you will please vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous, passed.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has passed with the unanimous vote. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is consideration of Texas Association of Sports Officials, TASO, seeking UIL recognition for the addition of water polo. Dr. Elsa, I'm going to let you take this from here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. If we need Dylan to share his screen, but I think everybody has their agenda, and Dylan, if I trip through anything and I don't have anything accurate, just correct it, please. But first, the overview. So in our last council meeting, in our October council meeting of last year, water polo was approved as a pilot program for the 2021. It's projected for the 2021 school year. And for those of y'all that may or may not have been a startup of anything, it's a pretty large undertaking. But as we all know, with this committee, you cannot have sports without officials. There was a current water polo association that called non-UIL competitions, ranging from adult water polo to youth league water polo, which I mean below the high school level, and then our club water polo teams that were an extension of our high school programs, but not a UIL recognized program. Those officials officiated that. So we reached out to them. Brandy Belk is our director of swim and dive, and has a great relationship with that community of folks. And through TISCA, reached out to them and asked them, did they want to maybe their association join UIL, or did their membership want to join an existing association, which TASO had volunteered to take on, water polo. And that's what you see reflected in your packets, is that vote. They did not want to join because of just probably some of the parameters and some of the training that they would have to undertake. They're not built for that, to call UIL. They still want to call the non-UIL stuff. They still want to call the youth stuff, and they still want to call the adult stuff, but they did not want to be a part of the UIL process. So what they did, since we didn't necessarily have a textbook definition of how this would happen, we went ahead. I had requested that they take a vote of their membership, and it was pretty overwhelming, that insignificant, as y'all saw reflected in the vote, that they wanted to join TASO. And you saw that Mike had also gone to his board and asked if they wanted to add water polo and all the processes that go with that. So as a matter of formality, and to add a sport, which we have not done, in my time, and probably even in Dr. Harrison's time, we need the Sports Officials Committee to make that recommendation. Was there anything that I left out, Dylan, or Brian Davis? And does the committee have any questions about this?
I think you pretty well explained it. Any questions for anybody on the committee? Okay, if there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion on this proposal.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Randy Davis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Eddie Hopkins. I'll now call for a vote on this proposal. Please vote at this time and leave your vote up until the UIL staff has recorded the vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has passed with a unanimous vote. Okay. That concludes what's on the agenda. Does anybody have any announcements or anything else that you would like to bring before the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make just a couple comments and not to belabor anything. Number one, thank you to this committee for your work. If I wouldn't be talking, this would be record time for us on a committee meeting as of late. So great job, Chairman Davis, and to all the committee members. I do want to say thank you for Dale for coming on. I think it's really important for our committee to hear from you. And you are welcome anytime and every time, as are all of our associations. And Mike, thank you for your work. I know you were pivotal in, the pay increase for officials. And I also think that you were very gracious in saying that you understood that second raise might not need to occur right now. And thank you for the willingness of your association to take on a new sport. I know that there's a lot of excited schools about this edition of water polo, and I know there's a lot of excited players that are excited about this, and it's a new adventure for us as well. And y'all know any opportunities that we can create for kids is always a positive. So with that being said, all of y'all I can't go on record without saying thank you to each of you for your work this year. It's going to be challenging, and we know the second year of this is going to be probably even more challenging. And we want to say thank you to the officials, because y'all are having to adapt to this just as much as we are. And we couldn't the kids wouldn't get these opportunities if the officials weren't on the courts and the playing fields. This year's going to be challenging, and each one of y'all in different ways have reached out to us, and sent us, words of encouragement and positive text, and the support means everything. You guys have a lot of hard work in front of you, being on the front lines, and we just appreciate what you're doing on behalf of kids, because we all know that if kids are engaged in positive things like athletics, then great things happen for them. It shapes them in ways that can't even be described at this time, in my little speech here. But I appreciate y'all. Y'all know if you ever need anything, we're just a phone call away. I'm going to kick it back to Chairman Davis. I do want to tell Dylan, great job today. You were on your solo flight, and we can just give the boot to Jessica Walker, because she wasn't even needed. You had it, man. Good job. Thank you for preparing for this meeting. This is an important meeting, and you have a lot of pressure on you, and you did a great job. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Dr. Elsa, and I'll second that. Dylan, I appreciate all your time and effort and putting up with not only the committee, but me personally. It seems like we talk quite often the week before these meetings, but I appreciate everything you do. And Dr. Elsa, I appreciate what you do for the UIL and for this committee. Anybody else have any comments or announcements, questions? Okay, I want to thank all of you for attending this meeting. Unless there's an objection, this meeting of the UIL Sports Officials Committee is now adjourned. The time is approximately 10:58. That may be a record, Dr. Elsa.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you all.
Soon, everybody stay safe.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Good job, Dylan. Good job.